Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gaudavani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Hashtagya Deshatarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Hashtagya Deshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Hare Krishna. Welcome to everyone. Welcome back to another daily reading of Srila Prabhupada's books. We're continuing in Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 13, text 8 through 12. They're all together. We do start with our invocation prayers. So feel free to chant along if you know them. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatan Vitang Tang Sajivam Sarvetam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Chakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Mukam karoti vachalang pongam hayate girim yat krapatamaham vande Shri Gurun Dinataranam. Alright, chapter 13, text 8 through 12. Amanitvam madambitvam ahimsa kshantirarjavam acharya pasanam saucham staryam atma vinigraha indriyarteshi vairagyam anahankara evacha janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkadosha nidarshanam Ashaktir anabhishvanga putradara grihadishu nityam cha samachitatvam ishtanishto papattishu Mai chananya yogena bhaktiravya vicharani vivikta desha sevitvam aratirjana sangsadi Adhyatma jnana nityatvam tattva jnanartha darshanam ithas jnanam iti proktam ajnanam yadaton yatha. Humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance. Purport. This process of knowledge is sometimes misunderstood by less intelligent men as being the interaction of the field of activity. But actually, this is the real process of knowledge. If one accepts this process, then the possibility of approaching the absolute truth exists. This is not the interaction of the 24 elements as described before. This is actually the means to get out of the entanglement of those elements. The embodied soul is entrapped by the body, which is a casing made of the 24 elements, and the process of knowledge as described here is the means to get out of it. Of all the descriptions of the process of knowledge, the most important point is described in the first line of the 11th verse. Mai chananya yogena bhaktir avya bicharini. The process of knowledge terminates in unalloyed devotion to the Lord. So if one does not approach, or is not able to approach, the transcendental service of the Lord, then the other 19 items are of no particular value. But if one takes to devotional service in full Krishna consciousness, the other 19 items automatically develop within him. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 5.18.12, Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavatya kinchana sarvar gunais tatra samasate shuraha. All the good qualities of knowledge develop in one who has attained the stage of devotional service. The principle of accepting a spiritual master, as mentioned in the 8th verse, is essential. Even for one who takes to devotional service, it is most important. Transcendental life begins when one accepts a bona fide spiritual master. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, clearly states here that this process of knowledge is the actual path. Anything speculated beyond this is nonsense. As for the knowledge outlined here, the items may be analyzed as follows. Humility means that one should not be anxious to have the satisfaction of being honored by others. The material conception of life makes us very eager to receive honor from others, but from the point of view of a man in perfect knowledge, who knows that he is not this body, anything, honor or dishonor, pertaining to this body is useless. One should not be hankering after this material deception. People are always anxious to be famous for their religion, and consequently sometimes it is found that without understanding the principles of religion, one enters into some group which is not actually following religious principles, and then wants to advertise himself as a religious mentor. As for actual advancement in spiritual science, one should have a test to see how far he is progressing. He can judge by these items. Nonviolence is generally taken to mean not killing or destroying the body, but actually nonviolence means not to put others into distress. People in general are trapped by ignorance in the material concept of life, and they perpetually suffer material pains. So unless one elevates people to spiritual knowledge, one is practicing violence. One should try his best to distribute real knowledge to the people so that they may become enlightened and leave this material entanglement. That is nonviolence. Tolerance means that one should be practiced to bear insult and dishonor from others. If one is engaged in the advancement of spiritual knowledge, there will be so many insults and much dishonor from others. This is expected because material nature is so constituted. Even a boy like Prahlad, who, only 5 years old, was engaged in the cultivation of spiritual knowledge, was endangered when his father... Even a boy like Prahlad, who, only 5 years old, was engaged in the cultivation of spiritual knowledge, was endangered when his father became antagonistic to his devotion. The father tried to kill him in so many ways, but Prahlad tolerated him. So there may be many impediments to making advancement in spiritual knowledge, but we should be tolerant and continue our progress with determination. Simplicity means that without diplomacy, one should be so straightforward that he can disclose the real truth even to an enemy. As for acceptance of the spiritual master, that is essential, because without the instruction of a bona fide spiritual master, one cannot progress in the spiritual science. One should approach the spiritual master with all humility and offer him all services so that he will be pleased to bestow his blessings upon the disciple. Because a bona fide spiritual master is a representative of Krishna, if he bestows any blessing upon his disciple, that will make the disciple immediately advance without a disciple's following the regulative principles. Or the regulative principles will be easier for one who has served the spiritual master without reservation. Cleanliness is essential for making advancement in spiritual life. There are two kinds of cleanliness, external and internal. External cleanliness means taking a bath. But for internal cleanliness, one has to think of Krishna always and chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This process cleans the accumulated dust of past karma from the mind. Steadiness means that one should be very determined to make progress in spiritual life. Without such determination, one cannot make tangible progress. And self-control means that one should not accept anything which is detrimental to the path of spiritual progress. One should become accustomed to this and reject anything which is against the path of spiritual progress. This is real renunciation. The senses are so strong that they are always anxious to have sense gratification. One should not cater to these demands, which are not necessary. The senses should only be gratified to keep the body fit so that one can discharge his duty in advancing in spiritual life. The most important and uncontrollable sense is the tongue. If one can control the tongue, then there is every possibility of controlling the other senses. The function of the tongue is to taste and to vibrate. Therefore, by systematic regulation, the tongue should always be engaged in tasting the remnants of foodstuffs offered to Krishna and chanting Hare Krishna. As far as the eyes are concerned, they should not be allowed to see anything but the beautiful form of Krishna. That will control the eyes.
What does he mean by that?
Means don't see anything but Krishna.
So like...
Don't even look at it. Don't even think it. Nothing but Krishna. But we can understand how to see Krishna in everything also.
Right.
Let's see what else he says. He might add more. That will control the eyes. Okay, I guess not. Similarly, the ears should be engaged in hearing about Krishna, and the nose in smelling the flowers offered to Krishna. This is the process of devotional service, and it is understood here that Bhagavad Gita is simply expounding the science of devotional service. Devotional service is the main and sole objective. Unintelligent commentators on the Bhagavad Gita try to divert the mind of the reader to other subjects, but there is no other subject in Bhagavad Gita than devotional service. It means you got to take Krishna's threefold bending form and glue it to the inside of your spectacles.
Literally? That's amazing.
You're not allowed to look at anything else.
That's very ideal.
False ego means accepting this body as oneself. When one understands that he is not his body and is spirit soul, he comes to his real ego. Ego is there. False ego is condemned, but not real ego. In the Vedic literature, Brihad Aranyaku Upanishad 1.4.10, it is said, Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahman, I am spirit. This I am, the sense of self, also exists in the liberated stage of self-realization. The sense of I am is ego, but when the sense of I am is applied to this false body, it is false ego. When the sense of self is applied to reality, that is real ego. There are some philosophers who say we should give up our ego, but we cannot give up our ego because ego means identity. We ought, of course, to give up the false identification with the body. One should try to understand the distress of accepting birth, death, old age, and disease. There are descriptions in various Vedic literatures of birth. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the world of the unborn, the child's stay in the womb of the mother is suffering, and so on, are all graphically described. It should be thoroughly understood that birth is distressful. Because we forget how much distress we have suffered within the womb of the mother, we do not make any solution to the repetition of birth and death. Similarly, at the time of death, there are all kinds of sufferings, and they are also mentioned in the authoritative scriptures. These should be discussed, and as far as disease and old age are concerned, everyone gets practical experience. No one wants to be diseased, and no one wants to become old, but there is no avoiding these. Unless we have a pessimistic view of this material life, considering the distresses of birth, death, old age, and disease, there is no impetus for our making advancement in the spiritual life. As for detachment from children, wife, and home, it is not meant that one should have no feeling for these. They are natural objects of affection, but when they are not favorable to spiritual progress, then one should not be attached to them. The best process for making the home pleasant is Krishna consciousness. You have a question?
No, I'm just frozen.
If one is in full Krishna consciousness, he can make his home very happy, because this process of Krishna consciousness is very easy. One need only chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Accept the remnants of foodstuffs offered to Krishna, have some discussion on books like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and engage oneself in deity worship. These 4 things will make one happy. One should train the members of his family in this way. The family members can sit down morning and evening and chant together Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. If one can mold his family life in this way to develop Krishna consciousness, following these 4 principles, then there is no need to change from family life to renounced life. But if it is not congenial, not favorable for spiritual advancement, then family life should be abandoned. One must sacrifice everything to realize or serve Krishna, just as Arjuna did. Arjuna did not want to kill his family members, but when he understood that these family members were impediments to his Krishna realization, he accepted the instruction of Krishna and fought and killed them. In all cases, one should be detached from the happiness and distress of family life, because in this world, one can never be fully happy or fully miserable. It doesn't mean if your family members are unfavorable to Krishna consciousness that you should fight and kill them. That was Arjuna's instruction for the circumstance. Just making sure that's clear for all the listeners. Happiness and distress are concomitant factors of material life. One should learn to tolerate as advised in Bhagavad Gita. One can never restrict the coming and going of happiness and distress. So one should be detached from the materialistic way of life and be automatically equipoised in both cases. Generally, when we get something desirable, we are very happy, and when we get something undesirable, we are distressed. But if we are actually in the spiritual position, these things will not agitate us. To reach that stage, we have to practice unbreakable devotional service. Devotional service to Krishna without deviation means engaging oneself in the 9 processes of devotional service: chanting, hearing, worshipping, offering respect, and so on. As described in the last verse of the 9th chapter, that process should be followed. Naturally, when one is adapted to the spiritual way of life, he will not want to mix with materialistic men. That would go against his grain. One may test himself by seeing how far he is inclined to live in a solitary place without unwanted association. Naturally, a devotee has no taste for unnecessary sporting or cinema going or enjoying some social function, because he understands that these are simply a waste of time. There are many research scholars and philosophers who study sex life or some other subject, but according to Bhagavad Gita, such research work and philosophical speculation have no value. That is more or less nonsensical. According to Bhagavad Gita, one should make research by philosophical discretion into the nature of the soul. One should make research to understand the self. That is recommended here. As far as self-realization is concerned, it is clearly stated here that Bhakti Yoga is especially practical. As soon as there is a question of devotion, one must consider the relationship between the supersoul and the individual soul. The individual soul and the supersoul cannot be one, at least not in the Bhakti conception, the devotional conception of life. This service of the individual soul to the Supreme Soul is eternal, nityam, as it is clearly stated. So Bhakti, or devotional service, is eternal. One should be established in that philosophical conviction. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 1-11, this is explained. Vedanti tat tattva vidas tattvam jnanam advayam. Those who are actually knowers of the absolute truth know that the self is realized in 3 different phases, as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Bhagavan is the last word in the realization of the absolute truth. Therefore, one should reach up to that platform of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus engage in the devotional service of the Lord. That is the perfection of knowledge. Beginning from practicing humility up to the point of realization of the supreme truth, the absolute personality of Godhead, this process is just like a staircase beginning from the ground floor and going up to the top floor. Now on this staircase, there are so many people who have reached the first floor, the second or the third floor, and so on. But unless one reaches the top floor, which is the understanding of Krishna, he is at a lower stage of knowledge. If anyone wants to compete with God and at the same time make advancement in spiritual knowledge, he will be frustrated. It is clearly stated that without humility, understanding is not truly possible. To think oneself God is most puffed up. Although the living entity is always being kicked by the stringent laws of material nature, he still thinks, I am God, because of ignorance. The beginning of knowledge, therefore, is amanitva, humility. One should be humble and know that he is subordinate to the Supreme Lord. Due to rebellion against the Supreme Lord, one becomes subordinate to material nature. One must know and be convinced of this truth.
This believing that I am God, I believe it's not just like a conscious thought, like, oh yeah, I'm God, I'm literally the supreme everything, and you're just consciously thinking it necessarily those exact words, but it's like subtly we'll just think like I am in control,
Right.
or I should be in control, or I need to be in control, or I'm getting closer to control, or I'm getting farther from control. Oh, it's like all of that, and that's just about the controlling aspect. There's other aspects of God's position that probably we do also try to
Enjoying.
enjoying.
Mostly enjoying, and people are trying to be the controller and the enjoyer, but they're trying to control to enjoy. Yeah, that's true. It's this. They have this sense, but a lot of people they haven't consciously decided I am God. But many have. A lot of people do. They really think they're God.
Yeah, there is that. So I do this. Like, I mean, I'm confident. I try to get this control, or I get scared without it. And it takes a real, like, for me, it takes a real, like, smack in the face for me to actually realize, like, oh yeah, it's not me in control. And even then, I don't remember it or hold on to that realization.
Yeah, it's deeply ingrained in us for so many millions of lifetimes.
So, chanting and hearing certainly has an effect on, probably has an effect on that, because it seems to have an effect on every stumbling block.
Yeah, especially hearing Prabhupada's books, so we're reminded, because we'll forget.
So, but we just have to remember that, I guess. Just, is that like the only way? Like, is there any tips as to how we can get out of this kind of mentality?
Well, yeah, but if we're hearing about Krishna and learning about Krishna, remembering Krishna, automatically will bring the understanding that Krishna is the controller, not me. So, unless we are like, like need the extra work to, rewire the mind on that topic, usually just focusing on Krishna would do the trick. Hearing about Krishna, chanting his holy name. If we have the submissive attitude in our hearing, and we have the we can perceive, we understand Krishna is, we understand ourselves as subordinate to Krishna, and Krishna's the supreme controller, and Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha. So if we're hearing, and Krishna is also non-different than transcendental sound vibration. So we're constantly being reminded, depending on our awareness of what's going on while we're practicing the process. But yeah, sometimes something will happen and we'll have to be like, oh, what is going on? Be like, yeah, okay, I'm trying, I'm trying to control here. Usually a association will help. Somebody will come tell us or something. Yeah. 13. Yam yat tat pravakshyami yat tvam ritamashnuте anadi mat param brahmana sattana saruchite. I shall now explain the knowable, knowing which you will taste the eternal. Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. Purport. The Lord has explained the field of activities and the knower of the field. He has also explained the process of knowing the knower of the field of activities. Now he begins to explain the knowable. First the soul and then the supersoul. By knowledge of the knower, both the soul and the supersoul, one can relish the nectar of life. As explained in the second chapter, the living entity is eternal. This is also confirmed here. There is no specific date at which the jiva was born, nor can anyone trace out the history of the jivatma's manifestation from the Supreme Lord. Therefore it is beginningless. The Vedic literature confirms this. Najayate manuyate va vipaschit. Katu Upanishad 1-18. The knower of the body is never born and never dies, and he is full of knowledge. The Supreme Lord, as the Supersoul, is also stated in the Vedic literature, Svetasvatara Upanishad 6:16, to be Pradhana Kshetragya Patir Guneshaha, the chief knower of the body and the master of the three modes of material nature. In the Smriti it is said, Dasa Bhuto Harer Eva Nan Yashyaiva Kadachana. The living entities are eternally in the service of the Supreme Lord. This is also confirmed by Lord Chaitanya in his teachings. Therefore, the description of Brahman mentioned in this verse is in relation to the individual soul. And when the word Brahman is applied to the living entity, it is to be understood that he is Vijnana Brahma, as opposed to Ananda Brahma. Ananda Brahma is the Supreme Brahman, personality of Godhead.
So, of course I shouldn't think that I shouldn't chant my rounds because I'm already in service of Krishna. But
What?
Because it says the living entities are eternally in the service of the Supreme Lord. Is that an automatic? Is he saying if we're not? Is this because we're following his path in all respects? Is that the kind of thing you're saying?
Let's see. As far as I can understand, yeah, essentially.
I've heard this perception about how it's everything serves Krishna in some way.
Directly or indirectly.
Yeah, directly, that's the right understanding, directly or indirectly. I wasn't about to think that I'm serving Krishna even if I'm not actually. I am serving Krishna though, I'm just not doing it directly, even if I'm not chanting or I'm not doing it.
Well, but we're serving Krishna in the sense that we're basically serving his energy, Maya.
His energy, yeah.
So Krishna conscious means directly serving Krishna consciously.
Yes.
It's not considered devotional service to be in Maya.
Yes.
But in one sense, we can understand that we are being controlled by, Krishna's energy. And in that way, we are, we don't act, we never act independently. Our only independence is basically desiring what direction we want to go. You desire, and man proposes, God disposes. If you want to enjoy nature in a particular way, material nature, then the modes of nature will carry out the process and whatever arrangements, whatever is needed for you to do that. We don't actually do anything. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. Kartaham iti manyate. It means he thinks he's the doer. That's 327.
bewildered spirit soul.
Yeah. Spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature.
So, but that nature is also Krishna's energy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the distinction.
Daivi yesha gunamayi mama maya daratyaya. That's 7:14. Daivi yesha gunamayi mama maya daratyaya mameva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. This divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it.
This whole thing about it all being Krishna's energy, it's very nice. Because actually it can give you, and that combined with the fact that we're all serving Krishna, everything is serving Krishna, except this is the actual way of, this is the path for people who actually really want to serve Krishna himself. But everything is already serving Krishna. I've heard this perception described about how nature, the wind blows for Krishna, the bees pollinate flowers for Krishna, or the bees do their thing for Krishna. Everything happens for Krishna. It's just not.
It's a matter of context.
Context.
Just like that verse we read, the wind blows out of fear of Krishna.
Yeah.
But in another context, the material world, Krishna is not getting anything from the material world. He's fully self-sufficient. It's doing nothing for him. If anything, it's more in service to the conditioned souls because they want to try to enjoy separately from Krishna.
Yeah.
So in that sense, we're not really serving Krishna. But in another sense, we can understand that we have no independent existence from Krishna. And in that sense, basically we're serving his energy, serving him indirectly through his energy. But it's not very good service, basically, because what's he actually getting out of it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you. It's nice. I like the different contexts, understanding.
Okay, where were we? 14. Sarvata panipadam tat sarvatokshi shiro mukam sarvata shruti maloke sarvam avrityatishthati. Everywhere are his hands and legs, his eyes, his heads and faces, and he has ears everywhere. In this way the Supersoul exists, pervading everything. Purport. As the sun exists, diffusing its unlimited rays, so does the Supersoul, or Supreme Personality of Godhead. He exists in his all-pervading form, and in him exist all the individual living entities, beginning from the first great teacher Brahma down to the small ants. There are unlimited heads, legs, hands, and eyes, and unlimited living entities. All are existing in and on the Supersoul. Therefore, the Supersoul is all-pervading. The individual soul, however, cannot say that he has his hands, legs, and eyes everywhere. That's not possible. If he thinks that under ignorance he is not conscious that his hands and legs are diffused all over, but when he attains to proper knowledge he will come to that stage, his thinking is contradictory. This means that the individual soul, having become conditioned by material nature, is not supreme. The supreme is different from the individual soul. The Supreme Lord can extend his hand without limit. The individual soul cannot. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that if anyone offers him a flower or a fruit or a little water, he accepts it. If the Lord is a far distance away, how can he accept things? This is the omnipotence of the Lord. Even though he is situated in his own abode, far, far away from earth, he can extend his hand to accept what anyone offers. That is his potency. In the Brahma Samhita 537, it is stated, Galoka eva nivasatya kyalatma bhutaha. Although he is always engaged in pastimes in his transcendental planet, he is all-pervading. The individual soul cannot claim that he is all-pervading. Therefore, this verse describes the Supreme Soul, the personality of Godhead, not the individual soul.
Just the quality of the words, his transcendental planet.
Yeah. Sarvendriya gunabhasham, sarvendriya vivarjitam, asaktam sarva prishchaiva, nirgunam gunabhoktracha. The Supersoul is the original source of all senses, yet he is without senses. He is unattached, although he is the maintainer of all living beings. He transcends the modes of nature, and at the same time he is the master of all the modes of material nature. Purport: the Supreme Lord, although the source of all the senses of the living entities, doesn't have material senses like they have. Actually, the individual souls have spiritual senses, but in conditioned life they are covered with the material elements, and therefore the sense activities are exhibited through matter. The Supreme Lord's senses are not so covered. His senses are transcendental and are therefore called nirguna. Guna means the material modes, but his senses are without material covering. It should be understood that his senses are not exactly like ours. Although he is the source of all our sensory activities, he has his transcendental senses, which are uncontaminated. This is very nicely explained in the Svetashvatara Upanishad 3.19, in the verse Apanipado Javano Grahita. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has no hands which are materially contaminated, but he has his hands and accepts whatever sacrifice is offered to him. That is the distinction between the conditioned soul and the super soul. He has no material eyes, but he has eyes. Otherwise, how could he see? He sees everything, past, present, and future. He lives within the heart of the living being, and he knows what we have done in the past, what we are doing now, and what is awaiting us in the future. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. He knows everything, but no one knows him. It is said that the Supreme Lord has no legs like us, but he can travel throughout space because he has spiritual legs. In other words, the Lord is not impersonal. He has his eyes, legs, hands, and everything else. And because we are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, we also have these things. But his hands, legs, eyes, and senses are not contaminated by material nature. Bhagavad Gita also confirms that when the Lord appears, he appears as he is by his internal potency. He is not contaminated by the material energy because he is the Lord of material energy. In the Vedic literature, we find that his whole embodiment is spiritual. He has his eternal form called Satchidananda Vigraha. He is full of all opulence. He is the proprietor of all wealth and the owner of all energy. He is the most intelligent and is full of knowledge. These are some of the symptoms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the maintainer of all living entities and the witness of all activity. As far as we can understand from Vedic literature, the Supreme Lord is always transcendental. Although we do not see his head, face, hands, or legs, he has them, and when we are elevated to the transcendental situation, we can see the Lord's form. Due to materially contaminated senses, we cannot see his form. Therefore, the impersonalists who are still materially affected cannot understand the personality of Godhead. Anything online? What was that? You hear that? Excuse me.
I really don't know.
I'll read at least one more verse. Vahirantascha bhutanam marcharam charam evacha shikshmatvat tad avigeyam durastam chantike chatat. The Supreme Truth exists outside and inside of all living beings, the moving and the non-moving. Because he is subtle, he is beyond the power of the material senses to see or to know. Although far, far away, he is also near to all. Purport: in Vedic literature, we understand that Narayan, the Supreme Person, is residing both outside and inside of every living entity. He is present in both the spiritual and material worlds. Although he is far, far away, still he is near to us. These are the statements of Vedic literature. Asino duram vrajati sayana yati sarvataha. Kata Upanishad 1.2.21. And because he is always engaged in transcendental bliss, we cannot understand how he is enjoying his full opulence. We cannot see or understand with these material senses. Therefore, in the Vedic language, it is said that to understand him, our material mind and senses cannot act.
We cannot see or understand with these material senses.
Material mind and sense, yeah. Therefore, in the Vedic language, it is said that to understand him, our material mind and senses cannot act. But one who has purified his mind and senses by practicing Krishna consciousness and devotional service can see him constantly. It is confirmed in Brahma Samhita that the devotee who has developed love for the Supreme God can see him always without cessation. And it is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 11:54 that he can be seen and understood only by devotional service. Bhaktya tvananayaya shakya. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Okay. Nothing. Engagement in devotional service is the only way. We must be humble. It's the only way. That's what the Christians say.
Is that true? Oh yeah, that is true. Lest ye carry out the will.
They say Jesus is the only way, the truth, and the light, or whatever. And we say, yeah, Bhagavad Gita says the same thing. Sarva dharman pratyaja mamikam charanam braja.
Lest you carry out the will
Tvam
of
sarva papaya mokshayishami mahushuchaha. Same thing. Just surrender unto me. It's the same.
Funnily enough, the Christians also say that unless ye carry out the will of God, ye shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven.
Yep. Well, got a half hour before kirtan time. I assume you probably need some transcendental foodstuffs.
This is true.
So, all right, we're gonna end here then. If Nikunja, if you don't have anything on here, our bowl. Our bowl. All right. Let me hit this. Hare Krishna. I will see you tomorrow. Same time, same place.